Imagine walking into a crowded room, your mind preoccupied with the mundane details of your day, when suddenly your body betrays you. Your breath catches. Your heart begins to race, not from anxiety, but from something deeper, more primal. Your skin seems to come alive with an electric awareness you can't name. Across the room, someone moves through the crowd, and though you've never seen them before, something ancient within you whispers, "There, that one." But here's what disturbs the rational mind. This recognition happens before thought, before analysis, before you've even exchanged a single word. Your body, the collection of flesh and bone you often ignore or take for granted, has made a decision that your conscious mind hasn't even begun to process. How is this possible? What does your body know that your thinking mind doesn't? Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who dared to explore the shadowy depths of human consciousness, proposed something that challenges everything we think we know about love and attraction. He suggested that our bodies possess an intelligence far more sophisticated than our rational minds, an intelligence that can recognize our psychological and spiritual counterpart before we're even aware such recognition is taking place. Think about the last time you felt truly drawn to someone. Not the superficial attraction based on appearance or social status, but that inexplicable pull that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. Did you notice how your body responded first? The way your posture shifted, how your breathing changed, the subtle tension or relaxation in your muscles. These weren't random physiological responses. They were your unconscious mind communicating through the only language it truly knows, the language of the body. But this raises a disturbing question that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. If your body already knows, why do you so often choose differently? Why do you override these deep, somatic signals in favor of what seems logical, safe, or socially acceptable? Why do you silence the very intelligence that Jung believed could guide you toward your most authentic connections? Consider how often you found yourself in relationships that looked perfect on paper. The right education, the right career, the right social circle. Yet something felt fundamentally wrong. You couldn't name it, couldn't explain it to friends who kept telling you how lucky you were. Your body tried to tell you, didn't it? Through restlessness, through a persistent sense of emptiness, through the way you never quite felt at home in your own skin when you were with them. And then consider the opposite, those rare moments when everything felt effortlessly right. When conversation flowed like water, finding its natural course. When silence felt comfortable rather than awkward. When your very presence seemed to bring out aspects of yourself you'd forgotten existed. Your body relaxed in ways you didn't even realize it had been tense. This wasn't coincidence, this was recognition. Jung understood that we are not simply individual, isolated beings making conscious choices about who to love. We are complex psychological systems, shaped by patterns that run deeper than personal history, deeper even than cultural conditioning. We carry within us what he called the collective unconscious, ancient templates of human relationship and connection that transcend our individual experience. And our bodies, Jung believed, are the receivers and translators of these deeper patterns. But here's where the mystery deepens and becomes almost unsettling. If this bodily intelligence exists, if we truly can recognize our psychological matches through somatic awareness, why does it feel so foreign to most of us? Why have we become so disconnected from this fundamental aspect of human wisdom? The answer lies in understanding something that most people never consider. We have been systematically taught to distrust our bodies, to prioritize the rational mind over all other forms of knowing. We've been conditioned to believe that love should make sense, that relationships should be logical choices we make after careful consideration of pros and cons. But what if this entire approach is not just wrong, but actively harmful to our capacity for authentic connection? What if the very thing we've been taught to ignore, the subtle language of our physical being, holds the key to finding not just love, but the kind of love that transforms us, completes us, and reveals aspects of ourselves we never knew existed? Your body is not just a vessel, carrying your consciousness through the world. It is an ancient, wise intelligence that has been shaped by millions of years of human relationship, connection, and survival. It knows things your thinking mind cannot access, perceives patterns your conscious awareness cannot detect. And when it tells you, this is the one, it's speaking from a place of knowing that transcends everything you think you understand about love and attraction. The question is, are you ready to listen? The tragedy of modern human existence lies not in our inability to love, but in our systematic disconnection from the very mechanisms that would allow us to love authentically. We have become strangers to our own bodies, exiles from our deepest knowing. And this exile has created what Jung called a split in the human psyche, a fracture between our rational consciousness and our instinctual wisdom. To understand why your body knows things your mind doesn't, you must first understand what Jung discovered about the architecture of human consciousness. Beneath the thin veneer of rational thought lies what he termed the unconscious, a vast, dark ocean of knowledge, memory, and pattern recognition that operates according to laws your conscious mind has never learned. This unconscious doesn't think in words or logic. It thinks in symbols, in sensations, in the ancient language of the body. When Jung wrote about the collective unconscious, he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He had discovered, through decades of analyzing dreams and psychological patterns, that we carry within us inherited templates of human experience, what he called archetypes. These are not learned behaviors, but evolutionary imprints, psychological DNA that predisposes us to recognize certain patterns of relationship, attraction, and compatibility. Your body, Jung realized, is the interface between these deep patterns and your conscious experience. It's constantly reading and interpreting information that your rational mind cannot access. Microexpressions, energy patterns, subtle biochemical signals, even what some researchers now call phenomenal conversations, happening below the threshold of awareness. When you meet someone who matches your deep psychological patterns, someone who complements your unconscious structure, your body responds with a recognition that feels almost mystical in its certainty. But here's where the problem begins, and it's a problem that goes to the very heart of how we've been conditioned to live. Friedrich Nietzsche, writing in the late 19th century, diagnosed what he called the death of God. Not literally the death of a deity, but the collapse of the intuitive, mystical ways of knowing that had guided humanity for millennia. In their place, we erected the altar of rationality, declaring that only what could be measured, analyzed, and logically explained was real. This shift, while advancing human knowledge in many ways, created what Jung saw as a profound psychological crisis. We began to treat the body not as a source of wisdom, but as an obstacle to pure thought. We learned to distrust our instincts, to override our gut feelings, to make decisions based on what looked good on paper rather than what felt right in our bones. Arthur Schopenhauer, whose philosophy deeply influenced Jung, understood this split between rational will and deeper knowing. He wrote about the way we become trapped in what he called representations, mental constructs that distance us from direct experience. In relationships, these representations manifest as lists of ideal partner qualities, societal expectations about who we should love, and elaborate mental frameworks for analyzing compatibility. But these frameworks, Schopenhauer realized, often obscure rather than reveal the deeper truth of connection. The philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty later articulated something that Jung intuited. The body is not merely a physical object, but a lived body, a conscious, knowing entity that perceives and understands the world in ways that transcend purely mental cognition. Your body knows things through direct experience that your mind can only approach through abstract reasoning. When you meet the right person, your body doesn't analyze their compatibility. It recognizes a pattern, a resonance, psychological fit that operates at levels far deeper than conscious thought. But modern culture has systematically trained you to ignore this bodily wisdom. From childhood, you've been taught that feelings are unreliable, that logic should override intuition, That love should be a rational choice based on shared interests and compatible life goals. You've learned to create elaborate mental checklists for potential partners while dismissing the subtle but profound information your body provides through attraction, resonance, and energetic compatibility. Jean-Paul Sartre, exploring the phenomenology of human relationship, discovered something disturbing. We often choose partners not based on authentic connection, but on what he called bad faith, self-deceptive patterns that allow us to avoid the anxiety of genuine intimacy. We select people who confirm our existing self-concept rather than challenge us to grow, who feel safe rather than transformative, who make sense to our social circle rather than speaking to our deepest self. This creates what Viktor Frankl would have recognized as a crisis of meaning in our most intimate relationships. We find ourselves in partnerships that fulfill social expectations but leave us feeling existentially empty. Connections that look successful from the outside but feel hollow from within. The body, meanwhile, continues sending its signals through chronic tension, through a persistent sense of restlessness, through the way we never fully relax into ourselves when we're with the wrong person. Jung understood that this split between mind and body, between rational choice and instinctual wisdom, wasn't just creating unsatisfying relationships. It was fragmenting the human psyche itself. When we consistently override our deepest knowing, we create what he called a complex, a split-off portion of the psyche that operates autonomously, often in ways that sabotage our conscious intentions. The result is a civilization full of people who are unconsciously starving for authentic connection while consciously pursuing relationships that can never truly nourish them. They've lost touch with the very instrument, their own embodied wisdom, that could guide them toward the connections they most deeply need. And this disconnection has consequences far more profound than simple relationship dissatisfaction. The human cost of ignoring your body's wisdom extends far beyond choosing the wrong romantic partner. When you systematically override your deepest knowing, you don't just compromise your relationships. You compromise your very sense of self, creating a cascade of psychological and spiritual consequences that ripple through every aspect of your existence. Consider what happens when you consistently choose partners your mind approves of, but your body rejects. Your nervous system begins to live in a state of chronic low-level stress. Your body knows something is fundamentally wrong, but your conscious mind keeps insisting everything is fine. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, but the reality is far more visceral than that clinical term suggests. Your body begins to speak to you in the only language it has left. Through anxiety, through depression, through mysterious physical ailments that doctors can't quite explain. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's groundbreaking research on trauma has revealed something Jung intuited decades earlier. The body keeps the score. When you betray your deepest instincts repeatedly, your body begins to shut down its communication systems. You lose access to the subtle sensations and intuitive knowing that once guided you. You become what Jung would have called unconscious, not in the sense of being asleep, but in the sense of being cut off from the deeper layers of your own psyche. This disconnection manifests in ways that most people never connect to their relationship choices. You might find yourself feeling inexplicably empty in social situations, as if you're watching your life from behind glass. You might develop what feels like chronic restlessness, a persistent sense that you're living someone else's life. Your creativity might begin to wither, not because you lack talent, but because creativity emerges from the same deep, instinctual place that recognizes authentic connection. The cognitive scientist Antonio Damasio has demonstrated through decades of research that we literally cannot make good decisions without access to our emotional and somatic intelligence. Patients with damage to the brain regions that process emotional information become incapable of making even simple choices, despite having intact rational faculties. They can analyze options endlessly, but cannot feel their way toward what is right for them. This research validates what Jung understood intuitively. When you cut yourself off from bodily wisdom, you don't become more rational. you become less capable of navigating life effectively. You find yourself trapped in analysis paralysis, able to think about your relationships endlessly, but unable to feel your way toward genuine satisfaction. But the consequences extend beyond individual psychology into the realm of what Jung called the collective shadow. When entire cultures systematically devalue bodily wisdom in favor of rational analysis, they create societies full of people who are unconsciously starving for authentic connection. This starvation manifests in compensatory behaviors, the obsession with romantic fantasy in media, the endless cycle of dating apps and superficial connections, the way people consume relationship advice like a drug, always seeking the perfect strategy or technique that will finally make love work. You can see this pattern everywhere in modern society. People spend enormous energy trying to optimize their dating profiles, analyzing texting patterns, strategizing about when to call and what to say. They approach love like a business problem to be solved through better data and more efficient processes. But all this mental activity serves primarily to distance them further from the very capacity that could actually guide them toward fulfilling connection. The neurobiologist Stephen Porges has identified what he calls the neuroception system, a preconscious process by which your nervous system evaluates safety and connection in social situations. This system operates entirely below the threshold of awareness, reading micro-cues in facial expressions, vocal tones, and body language to determine whether someone is safe to connect with. When you meet someone who is genuinely compatible with your deep psychological structure, your neuroception system signals safety and openness. Your body literally knows it's safe to be yourself. But when you've been conditioned to override these signals, you lose access to this ancient guidance system. You might find yourself in relationships with people who trigger subtle anxiety responses in your nervous system, but you interpret these signals as excitement or chemistry. You learn to mistake nervous system activation for attraction, stress responses for passion. This creates a particularly insidious cycle. The more you ignore your body's wisdom, the less accurate its signals become. Like any capacity that isn't used, somatic intelligence atrophies. You become increasingly dependent on external validation and mental analysis to navigate relationships, which only increases your disconnection from authentic knowing. The social psychologist John Gottman has spent decades studying what makes relationships succeed or fail. His research reveals something profound. Couples who last aren't necessarily those who share the most interests or have the most rational compatibility. They're couples who have what he calls physiological calm in each other's presence. Their nervous systems literally regulate each other. Their bodies feel at home together in ways that transcend mental compatibility. But here's what Gottman's research reveals about the current state of relationships. Most people have never experienced this kind of physiological compatibility. They've been so conditioned to prioritize mental connections over somatic resonance that they don't even know what they're missing. They settle for relationships that create chronic low-level stress because they've forgotten what genuine peace feels like in intimate connection. This forgetting has profound implications for human happiness and fulfillment. When you can't access your deepest knowing about connection, you become vulnerable to what Jung called psychological inflation. Mistaking temporary emotional highs for genuine compatibility, confusing drama for depth, mistaking intensity for intimacy. The result is a culture of people who are simultaneously overconnected and profoundly isolated, constantly seeking but rarely finding the kind of connection that nourishes rather than depletes, that brings out your authentic self rather than requiring you to perform a version of yourself that isn't quite real. But what if there was a way to reclaim this lost capacity? What if you could learn to trust your body's wisdom again? The path back to your embodied wisdom requires nothing less than a complete rebellion against everything you've been taught about how love should work. It demands that you reject the comfortable illusion of control that rational analysis provides and instead surrender to a deeper, more mysterious form of knowing, one that operates through sensation, intuition, and what Jung called active imagination. But this rebellion begins not with changing how you approach relationships, but with changing how you relate to your own body. You must learn to inhabit yourself differently, to treat your physical being not as a vessel for your thoughts, but as an intelligent system worthy of your attention and respect. The first act of rebellion is radical. You must learn to sit still with yourself without distraction. Not meditation in the spiritual sense, but what Jung practiced as active imagination, a state of open, receptive awareness where you allow your unconscious to communicate through bodily sensations, images, and feelings that arise spontaneously. This is how you begin to rebuild the bridge between conscious awareness and somatic intelligence. Start by noticing what your body tells you in ordinary social situations. When you're in conversation with different people, pay attention to how your breathing changes, how your posture shifts, where you feel tension or ease. Don't analyze these sensations, simply notice them. Your body is constantly providing information about safety, compatibility, and energetic resonance. You've just forgotten how to listen. Jung discovered something revolutionary through his own self-analysis. Our deepest attractions often point toward what he called our shadow, the undeveloped aspects of our personality that we need to integrate to become whole. The people who create the strongest somatic responses in us aren't necessarily easy or comfortable companions. They're often individuals who embody qualities we've disowned in ourselves, who challenge us to grow in directions we've been avoiding. This understanding completely transforms how you approach attraction. Instead of seeking someone who confirms your existing self-concept, you begin to recognize that your body's strongest responses often point toward people who will catalyze your psychological development. The intensity you feel isn't just chemistry. It's your unconscious recognizing an opportunity for individuation, Jung's term for the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Consider the story of Jung himself. His relationship with Toni Wolff, which lasted decades alongside his marriage, wasn't socially acceptable or rationally justifiable. But Jung recognized that his body's response to Wolff pointed toward aspects of his own psyche that needed development. She embodied what he called his anima, the feminine aspect of his unconscious that he needed to integrate to become psychologically complete. Their connection wasn't just romantic, it was a form of mutual individuation. This doesn't mean you should pursue every strong attraction or abandon relationship ethics. It means you must learn to distinguish between authentic somatic wisdom and mere compulsion, between the body's recognition of psychological compatibility and simple neurotic attraction to familiar dysfunction. The key lies in what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. When you feel a strong bodily response to someone, instead of immediately acting or immediately dismissing the feeling, you create space to understand what your unconscious is trying to communicate. Sometimes it's pointing toward genuine compatibility. Sometimes it's highlighting unhealed wounds or unintegrated aspects of yourself. Learning the difference requires developing what Jung called discriminating consciousness, the ability to feel deeply while thinking clearly. This process often requires confronting uncomfortable truths about yourself. You might discover that you've been choosing partners who feel familiar rather than nourishing, who recreate childhood dynamics rather than supporting your growth. You might realize that you've been unconsciously seeking people who won't challenge your carefully constructed persona, who allow you to remain psychologically comfortable rather than pushing you toward authenticity. The rebellion also requires rejecting the modern obsession with compatibility checklists and rational analysis. Instead of asking, "Do we have enough in common?" you begin asking deeper questions. Do I feel more like myself when I'm with this person or less? Does my body relax in their presence or maintain subtle defenses? Do they bring out aspects of myself I didn't know existed, or do they require me to diminish myself to maintain harmony? Ancient wisdom traditions understood something we've forgotten. The body is a form of intelligence, not just a container for intelligence. Indigenous cultures often chose life partners through elaborate processes that included not just mental compatibility, but energetic resonance, dreams, and even the consultation of what we might now call somatic intuition. The mystic poet Rumi wrote about meeting his spiritual teacher Shams. When you meet the friend, the voice in you that is a dog barking will stop. This describes perfectly what happens when your body recognizes authentic compatibility, a profound settling, a coming home to yourself that transcends mere attraction or intellectual connection. But perhaps the most radical aspect of this rebellion is learning to trust your body's wisdom even when it doesn't make sense to your rational mind, even when it contradicts social expectations or practical considerations. This doesn't mean abandoning discernment or making impulsive decisions. It means including somatic intelligence as equally valid data in your decision-making process. You must also learn to distinguish between your body's authentic responses and the conditioned responses created by past trauma, cultural programming, or neurotic patterns. This requires what Jung called shadow work, the honest examination of your unconscious motivations and unhealed wounds. Only when you can feel the difference between authentic attraction and compulsive attraction can you truly trust your somatic guidance. The ultimate rebellion is this: choosing to live as an integrated being rather than a divided one, honoring both your rational intelligence and your embodied wisdom, allowing both mind and body to guide you toward connections that nourish rather than deplete, that reveal rather than conceal your authentic self. This path leads to something most people never experience: relationships that feel like coming home to yourself. Here is the truth that will change everything you thought you knew about love, connection, and the deepest purpose of human relationship. Your body doesn't just recognize the right person. It recognizes the person who will complete the sacred work of making you whole. What Jung discovered in his deepest explorations of the unconscious was something that both ancient mystics and modern quantum physicists would recognize. We are not separate, isolated beings seeking connection with other separate beings. We are fragments of a larger wholeness. And authentic love is the process by which these fragments recognize and reunite with their missing parts. When your body tells you, this is the one, it's not simply identifying someone you'll enjoy spending time with or someone who shares your interests. It's recognizing what Jung called your syzygy, your psychological opposite and complement, the person who carries the undeveloped aspects of your own psyche. This recognition happens at the cellular level because it's not just emotional or mental, it's archetypal, written into the very structure of how consciousness organizes itself. Think about the profound implications of this. Every cell in your body contains the same DNA, yet each cell expresses only a fraction of that genetic potential. The liver cell suppresses its capacity to function as a brain cell. The heart cell doesn't try to be a kidney cell. But together, these specialized cells create a living system far more complex and capable than any individual cell could be alone. Human consciousness works the same way. Jung realized that each of us develops only a portion of our total psychological potential. We become introverted or extroverted, thinking or feeling types, intuitive or sensation-oriented. We develop what he called a persona, a functional but limited version of ourselves that allows us to navigate social reality. But this development always comes at a cost. We must suppress or ignore vast aspects of our potential self. The person your body recognizes as right is carrying what you've suppressed. They've developed the psychological functions you've neglected, embody the archetypal energies you've disowned, express the aspects of life you've feared to explore. When you encounter them, your unconscious recognizes not just compatibility, but completion, the possibility of reclaiming the fullness of who you could become. This is why authentic attraction often feels so overwhelming, so destabilizing. You're not just meeting another person. You're encountering your own unrealized potential reflected in human form. Your body responds with such intensity because it recognizes an opportunity for what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming psychologically whole. But here's the revelation that transforms everything. This recognition is mutual. When your body tells you someone is right for you, their body is receiving the same message about you. You're not just finding your missing piece, you're becoming theirs. This creates what Jung called a transcendent function, a psychological process that lifts both individuals beyond their previous limitations into a larger, more complete version of themselves. This understanding explains why authentic love relationships often feel simultaneously familiar and foreign, safe and dangerous, peaceful and transformative. You're recognizing someone you've never met before, yet who represents the completion of patterns that have been unconsciously guiding your entire life. Your body knows them because it knows the shape of your own incompleteness. The mystics have always understood this. The Sufi poet Hafez wrote, "I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being." But perhaps more accurately, authentic love shows you the astonishing light of your combined being, the luminous wholeness that emerges when two psychological fragments reunite. This is why Jung insisted that love is not just a personal experience, but a cosmic force. When two people recognize each other at this archetypal level, they become participants in what he called the cosmic marriage, the eternal process by which consciousness seeks to know itself more completely through relationship. Your body understands this cosmic dimension intuitively. It responds to authentic compatibility not just as personal satisfaction, but as participation in something far larger than individual desire. This is why the recognition feels so certain, so inevitable. You're not just choosing a partner, you're fulfilling a pattern that transcends personal preference. But this revelation comes with a profound responsibility. If your body's wisdom points toward psychological completion, then authentic relationship becomes a form of sacred work. You're not just seeking happiness or companionship. You're engaging in the mutual transformation that allows both individuals to become who they truly are. This changes everything about how you approach love. Instead of asking, "Will this person make me happy?" you begin asking, "Will this person help me become real?" Instead of seeking someone who accepts you as you are, you recognize that true love calls both individuals beyond who they currently are into who they could become together. The final truth is this: your body knows something your mind has forgotten. That love is not about finding someone to complete you, but about finding someone with whom you can complete the sacred work of becoming fully human. When your nervous system recognizes authentic compatibility, when your breath deepens and your heart opens and every cell in your body whispers yes, you're not just experiencing attraction. You're receiving an invitation to participate in the most profound creative act possible, the conscious evolution of human consciousness through intimate relationship. This is why your body's wisdom feels so mysterious, so certain, so non-negotiable. It's responding not just to personal chemistry, but to cosmic possibility. The recognition that in this person, with this person, you could finally become who you've always been meant to be. Trust that recognition. Your body has been waiting your entire life to deliver this message. When it finally does, listen with everything you have. The wholeness you've been seeking has been seeking you in return, and it's been using the ancient intelligence of your own flesh to guide you home to yourself. The body always knows. The question is whether you're finally ready to believe it.